All right, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining this talk. I am your host or the speaker, Jack Goodman, um, and this is Stylized VFX on a budget. All right, so why are we starting with stylized? Stylized is a bit different than realistic. Realistic is an established style. You don't have to do a lot of work um, in that sense that you have to, create a whole new world with its own rules of shadings and etc. So let's go through this and see how you could make a really good stylized VFX on a project of yours that is going through like a certain rules of stylization. Okay, so let's go through it. Who am I? My name is Jack. As I've said before, I am a real-time VFX artist, and I am originally from Syria, actually, and now I live in Austria. I have 5+ years in games, which is cute, and I would be considered a baby. But that's fine. And I just want to say that I'm really passionate about communication and basically just being able to bridge the art and the tech and the production part as well. So, if you really don't have time and you just want to get the takeaways real quick, I have prepared this slide for you and just for you to understand like what is there to avoid about hiring a VFX artist or cutting the budget and things like that. So number one rule is don't hire a VFX artist too late. For example, 1 month before shipping, give them all the sheets of the different effects, 70, 100, 120 effects that they have to do, and expect them to deliver fully or to deliver at all. The third common mistake, in my opinion, is production in a vacuum. Is when, let's say, you've done for the first step right, the second step right, but then the third step, you just isolate your contract workers from your team, your core team, which is like your employees or whatever. Um, that is a huge mistake because VFX role needs a lot of communication. They need to be up to date to all the weeklies and so on. So yeah, make sure that they are not working in a vacuum because if they do, then the result will also reflect that pretty early on. Okay, okay, Jack. Like what? All right, how to cut time then, I guess. So let's go through it. One of the main things that I would like to explain here is where the VFX role, like you as a VFX artist, where does it sit? And mostly it sits between the art, the tech, the production goals. And that means a VFX artist have to balance the fundamentals of art, for example, and all the principles of animations with the fact that all of this must be optimized and implementable, usable, like technically. For example, if it's a mobile game and so on and so forth. So it has to look good, it has to work good, and it must meet production goals, meaning deadlines must be met. Why do I put production goals here? Something maybe a lot of people don't talk about is because sometimes the art has a specific direction and it's hard to compromise. But if an effect takes you 2 months to be done, you should be able to communicate that to the producer. Tell them, hey, this effect this way will take me 2 months. Here's my other approach to it, technically speaking. It might take me a week. It might not look as good, but at least we'll have the effect with all the effects done in the game, and not just like one really beautiful effect. So yeah, ideally you would meet in the middle there. Okay, next step: the production stages of an effect. So what type of stages an effect has to go through? And mostly I like to call it ICVIFP, which is a lot longer, in my opinion, than just calling it as it is. An effect goes through ideation, creation, variation, implementation, and then a little pause, feedback, and polish. Why there's a pause, I'll explain every little step here. Ideation is basically concepting, and on a bigger budget, on a bigger commitment, say a AAA, here the VFX artist would sit down and concept all their effects, right, from scratch, or they would get a concept from the concept artist. in a budget, you need to be able to do that stage with the creation together. But you can only do that if there are criteria of communication that went through with the creative director and the art director. And I will go through some tips and tricks how to do that. Variation. What is a variation? A variation is, for example, you have created an explosion, and a variation of that would be another color. Simplest variation is another color, different timing, smaller, bigger, medium, etc. An implementation is basically putting the effect in the game, hooking it all with the hooks that have the logic. So for example, the if statements, if this happens, if the unit gains 1 more HP, you play the healing effect. And this is the technical part of it. And so once the implementation is done, most contract here ends, kind of. And basically, your effect is in the game. It made it in the game. As a producer, I would suggest that you give 2 weeks or 1 month, depending on your budget, of course, for feedback and polish at the end, because there will be feedback, there will be imperfections, and you cannot expect the implementation phase to be both feedback and polish, because that will really damage implementation. Implementation basically means it's in the game. It does not look perfect. It is in the game. Okay, now we separated the two. Let's go to the next slide. The when and the how. Okay, so like when to hire a VFX artist then, Jack. All right, so my rule is you've done with the prototyping, you got your budget, right? Like you started production of the game, the core mechanics are playable, and you have an art direction. That's exactly the time where you really need to hire a VFX artist. Okay, now that's tackled. Why is that, Jack? Mostly because the visual effects artists need to know how the game feels, because visual effects are not just decorations, they are also part of the soul and the feel of the game. So the earlier the earlier they can feel that and test that, the better the game will become, and they will be able to enhance all those gameplay feelings and yeah, and so on. So how to hire? Okay, one thing that I really suggest to every studio: please do art tests. It will really help you not only for you, but also for the visual effect artists to cut time on what the art direction is. And please open the channels of communication directly to the creative director and to the art director with the visual effect artist that you're trying to hire. Allow them 2, 3, 4 questions so they can understand what the art direction is. The earlier that is understood with an art test, the better the results are going to be forward. Okay, so art tests, how those art tests should be organized. Do not take your hardest effect. That is not how you determine a good artist. A good artist when it comes to visual effects is, especially when you have a tight budget, if your game has 70 explosions, medium, small, red, blue, purple, one with the, I don't know, that stays there forever, etc. Those variations, if you make the art test, if you make the artist, the visual effects artist, do an art test that makes a little explosion or a medium explosion, that can be used again later on. The same artist can be used early on to do a really quick cycle of production, and I'm gonna go and explain that later. So yeah, how do you pick your VFX artist? So let's say you have 17 applicants, right? They all submitted. You made a round of feedback or two, and you ask your art director, hey, which one of those is the best? They tell you person A, person B, and then you have an interview maybe or not, just to check the communication. I would go with whatever the art director picked and go forward, but if you think that there's a better fit for communication, that has priority, honestly, because communication is everything in video games. Okay, the next one. The what? What to do first? Okay, so you've picked your artist, right? You're now overwhelmed with, get to work. Please make us the effects. And what to do? So first, you hand in the list of effects. This 100, 200, 300 list of effects. The Excel sheet you want to give them. Give that to them, but don't stop there, because you cannot expect them to know the vision. You cannot expect them to know the art style. You cannot expect them to envision what you envisioned as a creative director, as a creative lead. So what you do is you sit down with them, you go through each and every effect, and you try to explain to them quickly, briefly what you envisioned, and provide a quick reference. If that is already provided, you say, I already have that. Please still sit down. You have saved yourself maybe 40 minutes of the meeting. Sit down and do like 20 minutes of just like going through it and explaining again what the effect is supposed to do. So if it's a reference from a movie, it's probably not gonna make sense to the effect artist. Just explain to them where it starts, where it ends, where it lands. Explain the journey of the effect, how you envision it. Okay, so we've done that. Can the VFX artist start now? And there's two ways to answer that. First one is sure, if you want to face hurdles going forward, and those hurdles will come on and on again and on again. But in my opinion, better not yet. Invest a little bit of time, and I'll tell you what to do next, just so you get the best out of your budget and the best performance as well. Here we go. So what is next then, Jack? All right, so the next step is to make the producer work closely with the visual effect artist. So close collaboration, very important. What does that mean? What does that mean when you have close collaboration with your visual effects artist and your producer? First thing first, production timelines. What are the goals for each deadline? Have the VFX artist explain the type of job that they have. So creation, variation, implementation, test, and polish. Have a deadline for each of those, and then go over the effect list again. In my opinion, it's very important to tag things that are challenging, because as an effect artist, sometimes, you're overwhelmed with the description from the last meeting. You're like, oh, I'm not sure if I can do that. I'm not sure if I can do that. Just tag things challenging with the producer there, and tag some things as potentially out of scope, meaning I might be able to go there if it's not game breaking, of course. I might be able to do that, but let's keep it a bit later once I've created enough systems, once I've created enough textures, so I could explore this again. And things that are nice to have, basically at all not game breaking. It could be like very, very nice to have. So in this way, you eliminate already a lot of planning, because you know what is challenging, what is potential out of scope, and what is nice to have. The producer also has that in mind, so it's not a mystery anymore. It is established. We talked about it in the beginning. Okay, next thing is think modularly. Let the VFX artist plan their effects modularly. All right, so what does that mean? What is a modular effect? I'm glad you asked. A modular effect is an effect that can basically be reused. Again, simply explained like the explosion. You can make it a bigger one, a smaller one, a medium one. Like, I cannot emphasize how important that is, because like from the past work that I've done, the artists have helped me create 35 effects or so by just making that one art test effect modular. And so as I'm starting, I already covered 35 effects, or I had the feeling that I do. So how does this work exactly? Let me explain it to you, to someone who doesn't know much about real-time VFX. So each effect is basically made out of components. There are textures, there are shaders, there are meshes, sometimes, not always meshes, and then there's the particle emitter. So this type of system, each engine has its own. I call them particle emitters. And what a particle emitter is, it's the thing that's controls everything above. So it controls the shaders, how the textures are being used, the meshes, how they're being spawned, the lifetime, the movement, the color, etc. And I can easily break down effects based on the particle emitter. That's my personal style. I just like to think about things on how they are emitting, what type of meshes they're using, what type of shaders they're using, what type of textures they're using, and I can call that a main like system that I could use over and over again. Okay, so modularity is reusing these systems, like I said, but for that to happen, you need, first of all, planning. You need to be able to categorize the effects into a family of systems. So, for example, one of the things that I've worked on early on was to categorize the beams, like if there were 30 effects that were all like beams and they acted like beams and their implementation were beams, they were beams. And I created the first system of the beam, that means the one beam effect, and then made variations out of that later. But first, the system got created, and I've created the other system for the explosions, and then the other system for the fire, etc., 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 and then I made that work with variations later on, and I'll explain how. Okay, so one quick production cycle. This is very crucial. So right after you categorize everything into groups, right, you have your systems, they're categorized, the producer knows about it, everybody knows about it. Okay, cool. This is how we're gonna work. But first, before you start creating, you really need to get a really good time estimation. So have the VFX artist do a quick full production cycle. What does that mean? Okay, we have the art test, right? Let's reuse the art test, create at least one variation. Let's make a full circle, right? Ideation done, creation is done. Let's do a variation. And make an implementation. So talk to the tech team, tell them what you need, and what is how to be expected to implement those things in the game. They will tell you there will be a failure or two. You will test it. You will come back, ask them for more questions, and then you will have feedback from the art and the tech sometimes, and then you will polish. So do all of that the first week with one effect that you've done, preferably, of course, the art test, because you already done that. Why is this important? You will have time estimation. It's rough, and in my opinion, it's the worst case, because everything that you have to kick off takes a lot of time, but work gets easier, especially VFX work, because you will have the textures that you could reuse, you would have the shaders that are created, and some of the particle emitters that you could just duplicate and then use again for a different effect. All of this will get easier, and it's really important to get that time estimation early on. The second most important thing is you will get an early trial and error and feeling about how the team works together, because each team is like its own novelty, and each game has its own novelty approach of like how the implementation is done, and so on. So the earlier the issues basically pops up in the team, the better it's gonna be, the smoother it's gonna be. You're just jump starting that with one quick production cycle. Okay. Then, after that, you would start creating the systems, and then it will go through the production cycle. But most importantly, you really need that rapid feedback and iteration. Why? Because effects are real-time, and they have this feature that allows for quick edits. So if the art director said, hey, no, not this color, can you make them move counterclockwise? Can you make them do this? It's an easy fix, right? It's instead of 2, you put -2. It's not always the case with certain changes, but most of the times it's a real-time thing that you could do quick edits with. So rapid feedback and iteration is actually very important to make sure that the vision and everything else is met. So, and here I would say the perfection is like the enemy of good when it comes to VFX. Do not wait to show your work weekly, and that's just a personal advice for VFX artists. Make it easy to share GIFs of your work daily. Put them in a channel, right, where the art director and the creative director can just pop in, put some emojis there, and then in the weekly you can anyway talk about more detailed feedback. Or if your creative director or your art director are a bit more open, they would tell you, more open in time, of course, they would tell you in the chat, right? And if you have your chat organized and everything, that should be fine. However, technical issues are a bit more complex because they are more logical and they need specific solutions. So things like specific hooks for specific behaviors of a unit or whatever, you can't find it, you don't know how to do it. You can, my advice is to make a support channel, basically a customer support channel, put those things there. And I've learned this from Rami as well, thanks to him, we were able to counter this very easily. Like, have a customer support channel and put your technical questions there, make them be gathered in a week, and then have the devs have like 4 hours a week into just looking into them. I would say 4 hours a week, preferably like they would do those 4 hours into 2 days a week or 1 day a week. I mean, depends on how much time they have. This allows for rapid implementation. So I would be, if I have like 50 effects to implement, I'll try the first one, the second one, the third one, fourth one will have problem. I'll put the problem there in that channel. It will go to the fifth one. Maybe it has another problem. I'll put it there. The sixth, the seventh, the eighth, and then the ninth has another problem. It's so on. You know, you get those solved very quickly, especially if you have a huge list. And sometimes one solution can be hooked to the other solution. So you might have like 10 tickets or whatever, but then they will all be solved immediately. Okay. Let's go to the next one, and it is cross-team integration. What some people might miss is that if you have an SFX team or an SFX person who's also a contractor, VFX and SFX really work well together. And if you don't know what SFX is, it's sound effects. So for example, we can help each other by concepting and envisioning. So sometimes when the sound effects team are looking at your visual effects, they could easily say, okay, this sounds like that. Or when the visual effects is listening to a sound, they can say, okay, I have an idea how that's done. So it really lessens the time of like variation and everything, and asking a lot of questions. So we kind of like complete each other in that sense. Not only that, but we also have shared hooks and triggers, like, for example, how the logic of the game is working with everything else. So the sound effects team might use something like heal when HP is +1. Let's say they did that already, they hooked it in the game. You can just immediately check how they made it and, you know, do it on your own as a visual effect artist. So in my case, for example, I was hired before the sound effect team. And it might be in the sound effect team like came a bit too late, but I was able to help out still with like onboarding them, answering all their questions, because I've had the same questions. So I was able to have the hiring process. I was able to make easier for them, and also was able to plan that they would use the same hooks I already implemented in the game, and they would, for example, implement all of those easily. And I suggested that they start implementing the other half of the tasks, and then I was able to implement my stuff very easily because of them. So yeah, we kind of work together. We complete each other's work that way. Yeah, so cross-team integration is very important, and that's it. I will just sum up my points and the key takeaways, basically, and what I've learned so far in my experience. And that is, please hire your visual effects artist early on. Jumpstart with communication, like I said. Invest some time to cut some time. If you don't invest time in communication, you will not be able to cut a lot of time, but you will be able to cut time if you invest early on with the onboarding and things like that to answer the questions very early on. Art and tech expectations must be aligned with production, like I said. Production goals need to be met. Art can be sometimes too arty, right? Tech can be a bit too complex, and that together with the production must align, and there must be like some type of compromise there, here and there, to make it go forward. Think modularly, reuse, right? And early micro production cycle, like we discussed, make it very clear early on what is needed from a visual effects artist, and see how much time is estimated for that task, and then keep going. Be smart about your art test as well. Don't just like put an art test that is just to showcase what's technically possible, but also don't make it super hard. Make it, the main goal of it is to reflect the art direction, basically, and expand on that later. And make it also something where communication is important. Like, is this person asking me questions? Are they shy to ask me questions? Or are they more bold to ask questions? Are they taking the feedback more clearly? You can put things like this in the art test to make it more clear. Okay, yes, finish creating the modular systems. Yeah, once the modular systems are done, the variations becomes easier. However, if there is low-hanging fruits, do those. They are important because they're only done when they're done, right? Yeah, and then implement. And here where the sound effects can be, the sound effects and the tech department can be very helpful to be on the same page. Okay, closing thoughts. I just want to say VFX. Visual effects are not like a last-minute decoration on your game. They are very much involved in the soul and the feel of your game. So really consider having a visual effects artist on your project early on, like after prototyping, I would say. Okay, if you have any questions, any inquiries, please reach out on LinkedIn or any other platform. My name is Jack Gutman. Sometimes I go by Jack the Generalist on Twitch or on YouTube because I also do content. So if you have any questions, definitely do reach out. I would love to hear your opinion and your thoughts. All right, everyone, thank you so much. And I will hear from you hopefully soon, and have a great evening or day. All right, Jack was here. Thank you so much.